When night falls and sound withdraws, the archive remains. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. Night gathers without announcement. The temperature drops by small degrees, not as an event, but as a slow release of heat from stone, wood, and soil into a sky that returns little. Air cools first near the ground, then higher. Where cooling reaches a narrow threshold, vapor changes state without drama. What was transparent becomes populated. Fog is not a wall. It is a medium made of suspended droplets. Each droplet is small enough to float, large enough to alter light. The droplets do not fall. They remain held by weak upward currents and by their own low settling speed. The air becomes thick with particles that have no intention and no direction. In clear air, distance behaves like a straight line. In fog, distance behaves like a gradual loss. The far end of a path does not disappear at once. It is reduced. Contrast collapses first, then detail, then edge. What remains is tone without boundary. What remains after edge is not nothing. It is the same world, held at a lower resolution. The stones are where they were. The path continues. Only the report has changed, the precision of what the eye can claim. Fog does not take things away. It withholds the certainty of their outline. A path extends forward. Gravel lies underfoot, darkened by moisture that has settled into each stone. The damp does not shine. It absorbs. The surface of each pebble carries a thin film, enough to change how it returns light, not enough to form reflection. The path exists as a pattern of pressure. Stones set into soil, soil holding the stones, stones holding their arrangement. The fog passes over it without shifting it. The fog does not move objects. It changes how objects can be seen. A lantern stands beside the path. Metal frame, glass panels, a small flame contained within. The flame is not stable as a shape, but it is stable as a process. Combustion continues at a rate determined by wick, oil, and oxygen. The flame narrows and widens within its enclosure, never leaving its boundary. The wick is darker at its tip, where combustion concentrates. Below the tip, the wick is pale, still saturated with oil that has not yet reached the flame. The oil travels upward through the wick by capillary action, drawn toward heat that consumes it. The flame exists at the meeting point of what is rising and what is burning. That meeting point is continuous, constant, unannounced. Fog receives the light immediately. Light does not travel far. It enters the vapor and disperses. Droplets scatter brightness sideways, backward, upward, downward. What would have been a directed beam becomes a volume of glow. The lantern illuminates air more than it illuminates ground. There is no clear circle of light on the gravel. There is no sharp shadow behind the frame. The lantern glows, but does not project. Distance exists, but not as a visible measurement. It exists as attenuation. The farther the eye looks, the more the medium intervenes. The intervening medium becomes the dominant object. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence enters the fog and loses edge. Warmth gathers near the glass. Heat transfers outward from flame to metal, from metal to air, from air to skin. The transfer is local. Beyond a narrow radius, temperature returns to night. The difference is not symbolic. It is gradient. The lantern's handle rests above the frame. Metal cools slowly where it is farthest from the flame. The frame holds two temperatures at once. Warmer near the chamber, cooler at the outer edges. The difference produces faint internal stresses that remain silent. Condensation begins on the inner surface of glass. Warm, humid air inside meets cooler pane. Droplets form along invisible nucleation points, tiny imperfections where water can gather. A bead appears, enlarges, and holds. Surface tension resists gravity until the bead becomes heavy enough to move. When it moves, it leaves a thin line of water behind. The line refracts the lantern's glow. The flame appears to bend, to duplicate, to smear for an instant. The distortion passes as the droplet descends. The fog outside the glass continues to scatter what emerges. The combined effect produces a glow with no reliable outline. The boundary of light is not a border, it is a thickness. A stone wall stands behind the lantern, set back enough that its surface receives only the outermost scatter of the glow. The stones are dark with age and moisture. The mortar between them is a lighter tone, or was. Fog has equalized the difference, bringing both closer to the same grey. The wall does not end where visible. It continues into the fog in both directions, its length unknown from here. A structure that begins and concludes somewhere beyond what can be seen, holding its position without requiring confirmation. Breath enters, breath leaves. The fog does not register it as wind. It registers it as minor temperature and moisture exchange that disperses immediately. Footsteps begin along the path. Gravel shifts under weight. Each stone presses deeper into soil for a moment, then returns to its resting position as weight transfers forward. Moisture is pushed into crevices. Water does not splash, it redistributes. Sound behaves differently here. A step creates a brief granular friction. The sound travels outward, then shortens. Fog does not absorb sound directly the way soft material does, yet the environment changes how sound finds direction. Without clear distant reflections, the ear receives less return. Echo has fewer surfaces to reach before it thins below perception. The footsteps themselves sound closer than they are, or farther. The medium removes the reference points that allow distance to be judged by ear. Each step arrives without reliable context. The body continues forward. The path confirms itself only underfoot, only where weight arrives. A branch falls somewhere unseen. The impact is brief. The sound does not announce distance clearly. It arrives softened, then ends without a long tail. Direction is uncertain. The space feels closer, not because objects moved inward, but because information fades sooner. The lantern remains fixed. The fog moves in slow currents. The movement is visible only where brightness catches droplets and makes their density apparent. A faint drift passes through the glow, like a dim wave. The wave has no edge. It is only a change in thickness of the medium. Farther along the path, another lantern waits. Its light appears weaker, or the fog between is denser, or both. The difference is difficult to assign because the medium collapses the certainty of comparison. The second glow is present, but it does not hold detail. It holds only itself. Between the two lanterns stretches a span without clarity, not empty, not full, a region in which distance cannot be measured by sight, only by the fading of contrast. The nearer lantern has warmth that can be felt at close range. Beyond that range, the night returns. Heat becomes another way the fog defines boundary, a warmth that diminishes in the same manner as brightness. The space between two glows is not darkness, It is the place where both lights arrive already thinned, already scattered, arriving from opposite directions at equal weakness. Neither lantern claims it. It belongs to the medium. The flame responds to air inside its chamber. It narrows when oxygen thins, widens when oxygen increases. The movement is small, contained. No flare, no struggle. The process continues without urgency. The glass continued to gather condensation. Droplets form, pause, descend. Each descent bends light. The lantern becomes a machine that produces subtle distortions without changing its own structure. No outline holds steady. A tree stands beyond the lantern. Its trunk is present as darker tone. Branches are suggestion. Where bark would be detailed in clear air, fog replaces detail with gradation. The interruption is not obstruction. It is diffusion. In clear air, light defines. In fog, light inhabits. Moss covers the lower portion of the tree's bark. It holds moisture the way cloth holds warmth, not tightly, not as storage, but as a natural consequence of its structure. The moss is darker now than it will be by morning. Saturated. Each small fiber has taken what the air offered, and the offering has not stopped. The moss does not distinguish between enough and more. It simply receives until equilibrium arrives on its own. Where bark meets moss, no clear line separates them. Moss has entered the irregularities of the wood, followed fractures, spread along grain. The boundary is not a surface. It is a region of gradual transition. Wood becoming less wood, moss becoming less moss, both becoming something that requires no name. Edges withdraw first, corners soften, angles loosen. The lantern does not resist this. It continues to burn, continuing to create the same condition. Brightness scattered into air. Breath enters, breath leaves. The path continues underfoot as gravel and moisture and pressure. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence is visible only as it disappears. A bridge crosses a narrow stream. Wood planks are dark with moisture, saturated not enough to drip, enough to dull their grain. The lantern stands at the bridge's entrance. Its glow meets water vapor rising from the stream's surface. The vapor is warmer than the air above it, and it rises in thin sheets that thicken into fog where temperatures equalize. Reflections fracture here, not because water is turbulent, but because the medium between lantern and stream is unstable. Droplets scatter light before it reaches the surface. What arrives at the water is already diffused. The stream returns a broken suggestion rather than a mirrored line. Below the bridge, current moves without outline. The water flows, yet in fog it is registered less by surface detail and more by the faint sound of movement, softened and localized. The sound does not travel far. The stream continues beneath without witness. Above the bridge, light without edges. Below the bridge, current without outline. The two do not merge. They coexist without boundary. Separated by structure the fog makes difficult to see. The bridge remains a measured distance between flow and foot. The planks hold their arrangement. Nails driven years ago still hold the wood against the frame. Rust has formed along the nail heads, slight and dark, spreading outward by a fraction of a millimeter each season. The rust does not weaken the hold yet. It only marks how long the iron has been in contact with moisture and air. A record kept in oxidation, on a surface that no one reads. The path narrows beyond the bridge. Fog thickens near the ground where air is colder. The lower air is denser, more populated with droplets. The upper air, marginally warmer, holds slightly less. Layers form without seam. The transition between them is not a line. It is another thickness. A gate appears ahead. 2 posts and a beam across. The form is known, but visibility is partial. Light touches one post. The other recedes sooner. Symmetry dissolves in vapor. The gate is present as structure, but not as certainty. A bell hangs from the beam, still and unstruck. Moisture gathers along its rim. A droplet forms, lengthens, falls. The fall makes no sound, not because it is silent, but because it is too small to compete with the medium shortening of distance. The droplet meets wood. The contact ends. Somewhere beyond the gate, water drips from a roof edge at irregular intervals. The drops do not form a pattern. Each arrives in its own time, determined by how much moisture has gathered at that particular point, at that particular angle. The interval between drops is not measured. It simply passes. Then another drop forms, and the forming takes as long as it takes. And no waiting is required because the waiting and the forming are the same duration experienced from different positions. The bell holds its shape in the fog the way the gate holds its shape, as mass rather than as detail. What can be seen is presence, not surface. The bell is there, its curve, its weight, its hanging. These are known by form, not by clarity. Fog grants a different kind of knowing, slower, less certain, no less true. Light does not reveal the entire gate. It reveals contact, wood fiber where moisture has darkened it, a metal hinge where condensation has collected, a trace of rope where twist holds shadow. Beyond the gate, the distinction between path and field weakens. Fog unifies what daylight separates. Unification is not erasure. Forms remain. Recognition slows. The flame contracts once more as oil lowers. Wick darkens at the tip. The lantern does not brighten in resistance. It reduces. Combustion concludes by degrees. The reduction changes the relationship with fog. When brightness lowers, scattering still occurs, but the visible radius shrinks. The boundary thickens further because contrast narrows. Shadow loses its edge. Light loses its edge. The entire scene becomes a gradient. Distance cannot be confirmed by sight, only by the fading of glow, the fading of warmth, the fading of sound. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence reaches the gate as a dim tone, then dissolves. Oil thins. Flame lowers toward the base of the wick. The first change is not darkness. The first change is reduction of contrast. Highlights disappear. The brightest point softens into a smaller region. The glass no longer contains a vivid center. It contains a duller one. Fog continues its suspension, independent of flame. The medium remains because temperature and moisture remain. The lantern is not the cause of fog. It only made fog visible. When flame withdraws completely, no signal marks the exact moment. There is no sharp cut. Brightness becomes less brightness, then less still, until the scene arrives at uniform dimness. The final trace of light lingers in vapor, not as beam and not as shape, only as less darkness. Then that too equalizes. Metal remains, glass remains, fog remains. Glass cools gradually. Condensation changes behavior. Droplets form less often, then hold longer before moving. Eventually, The rate of formation slows as temperatures balance. The inside surface becomes closer to the outside air. The glass clears slowly, not by wiping, but by equilibrium. The lantern, unlit, becomes a darker object within fog. But even that darkness has no clean edge. The frame is present, yet it blends. The handle is present, yet it does not define itself. The fog still scatters any distant light that exists. Moon, far lanterns, a house window beyond the path. Those sources are not seen directly. Their presence is registered only as faint changes in tone across the medium. Something moves in the field beyond the gate. A shape without name, without speed that declares itself. The fog does not clarify it. The fog holds it at the level of suggestion, neither confirming nor withdrawing. The shape continues at its own pace through the medium, and then the medium closes behind it. No outline remains. No direction was ever certain. The path holds its stones. The bridge holds its span. The gate holds its posts. None of these needed flame to exist. Flame only provided a local contrast that allowed edges to be assigned. Without flame, edges are not gone. They are simply not insisted upon. The medium widens every boundary. In this widening, the mind stops trying to pin exact lines to forms. Certainty relaxes because the environment refuses precision. Breath enters, breath leaves. Between them, no flame. Only suspended air holding droplets, altering every distance, softening every angle, turning every boundary into thickness. The night does not close. It was always open. Fog does not seal it. Fog reveals how little edge the world requires to remain present. Metal cools, glass clears by degrees. Moisture remains in air. The unlit frame stands as mass without projection. The second lantern, farther along the path, continues to burn. Its glow is not visible from here. Its warmth does not reach. But the fog between carries a faint, sourceless luminosity. The residue of its scattering arrived without direction, without origin that the eye can name. Light without a lantern, warmth without a flame. Only the medium holding what passed through it, offering it back at reduced strength, in all directions equally. Nothing seeks outline. The fog has no memory of the lantern. It does not hold the shape of the light that passed through it. Each droplet scattered what arrived and continues suspended, indifferent to what it carried. The glow existed in the medium for a time. The medium remains after the glow. Between them, no record was kept. This is how fog holds the night, not by containing it, but by refusing to separate it into parts. Near and far become the same quality of dimness. Sound and silence become the same quality of softness. The cold that was outside the lantern's radius and the cold that is everywhere now. The same cold, arrived at the same temperature, settled without distinction. Within this field, light and absence are not opposed. They are variations in degree, changing slowly, equalizing without announcement. Breath enters. Breath leaves. The interval holds.